Good evening, settle in comfortably and let your body relax. Adjust your blanket just enough to feel cozy, maybe take a slow, calming breath and let your mind drift gently as you prepare to step into a different kind of story. Imagine the soft hum of a quiet world where shadows dance softly at the edge of your awareness and the night whispers secrets only the attentive can hear. Tonight, I invite you to imagine a strange and curious scene, one that whispers of masks with long beaks and cloaks that seem to swallow the air around them. Think of a world where the air itself carries stories of sickness and survival, cloaked in mystery and old fears. Picture a place where simple acts like washing your hands or scrubbing away unseen threats might seem both strange and oddly reassuring, like fumbling with tangled earbuds or waiting in a never-ending line at a quiet bank. There's a cool breeze of intrigue sweeping through this night's tale, carrying hints of shadows and faint murmurs from a distant past, a time when medicine was as much an art of superstition as science. And as you listen, know that soon your eyes will flutter open, not in your familiar room, but somewhere else, where the air feels thick with whispers and every shadow holds a story waiting to be uncovered. Just breathe and prepare to wake up in a world where the unfamiliar becomes strangely comforting, and even the most peculiar ideas feel like old friends. Your skin prickles from the coarse roughness of your rough woolen blanket, which scratches against your arm as you shift. Beneath you, the wooden floorboards groan softly, each plank uneven and splintered, whispering stories of years long past. The texture of your clothes is stiff and coarse, like armor made of burlap, and every breath you take pulls in a gust of cold, dry air that seems to seep through the cracks of the humble walls. The room is dim but alive with movement. Faint light filters through a small, narrow window, casting jagged shadows that dance across the uneven stone walls. The faint clang of a distant hammer on an anvil echoes through the streets, mingling with the distant murmur of voices, some anxious, some tired, others pleading. Occasionally, you catch the faint, mournful cry of a bird or the distant clatter of carts rolling over cobblestones. The smell of burnt herbs, mingled with the sweat of the sick, permeates the air, while the faint aroma of rotting meat or spoiled bread offers a grim reminder of the day's struggles. Your ears pick up the distant tolling of a church bell, slow and deliberate, marking the passing hours or perhaps signaling a prayer for the fallen. Somewhere nearby, a pot bubbles over a fire, releasing a bitter, smoky odor that clings to the air and to your nostrils. The atmosphere is heavy, oppressive, as if the very walls are breathing in the fears and hopes of those around you. You feel a rough, cold touch on your shoulder, perhaps a hand, or just the fabric of your cloak as someone passes by, wary and hurried. You might notice the roughness of your own garments, or the sensation of dirt and sweat beneath your skin, reminding you that comfort is a luxury long gone. The taste of stale bread or tepid water lingers on your tongue, both dull and sour, a reminder that sustenance is scarce and uncertain. Every sensation is heightened, raw and unfiltered, an unsettling contrast to the sleek, sanitized world you might be used to. And yet, amidst this chaos, there's an odd sense of routine, a strange rhythm to the daily struggles, the careful movements of those tending to the sick, the hurried steps of merchants and villagers. You see the figures moving through the narrow street, cloaked in layered robes, masks with beak-like masks, their eyes peering out from beneath hoods, wary and resigned. Children run past, their laughter muffled by the heavy air, while elders and priests stand in silent prayer, shoulders hunched against the weight of unseen terrors. Your first instinct might be to chuckle at such a scene. How different from your modern life, where a quick swipe of sanitizer wipes away 1,000 worries. Here, the very act of washing hands, once a simple routine, is now a ritual of uncertain meaning, performed amid the scent of herbs and the suspicion of unseen enemies. You might think, your idea of a rough morning used to be missing your coffee or misplacing your phone. Here, it's realizing your mask smells worse than the patients you're supposed to help. A tiny, ironic smile creeps onto your face as you prepare yourself. You reach out, grasp the rough fabric of your cloak, and stand. The world outside beckons. You step carefully into the village, your boots echoing on the uneven stones, feeling the weight of curious eyes and wary glances. The streets are bustling with life, merchants shouting over each other, children darting between carts, soldiers patrolling with stern faces. Dozens of faces turn towards you, some with a mixture of respect and fear, others with outright suspicion. The mask you wear, an odd, beak-shaped contraption, draws immediate attention, a strange cross between a bird of prey and a ghostly guardian. The villagers' eyes flicker over the peculiar visage, some nodding politely, others exchanging nervous whispers behind cupped hands. In the distance, a woman in a stained apron calls out to her sickly child, her voice trembling as she gently pushes a cloth to her forehead. A soldier stands guard, his armor dull and battered, eyeing you with a mixture of curiosity and caution. A baker's cart emits a pungent aroma of stale bread and sour wine, while a nearby blacksmith's hammer rings out in a rhythmic clang, sparks flying like tiny stars. The town feels alive, yet heavy, anchored in a reality where danger lurks in every shadow, and health is a fragile gift. As you observe, it becomes clear. You are not in your world anymore. The scene is thick with unease, yet somehow also mundane, like a long, odd dream where everything is simultaneously familiar and strange. To truly understand where you've just woken up, you need to step back and see the larger picture, the world that has carved out this existence, shaped these customs, and made masks, herbs, and quiet prayers a daily necessity. But for now, just breathe and let yourself soak in the strange, comforting chaos until you are ready to explore it further. You find yourself living in a time where the world moves at a pace that feels both slow and relentless, an era nestled in the heart of the Middle Ages, somewhere between the 14th and 15th centuries, during the tumultuous years often remembered as the age of knights, castles, and profound uncertainty. The air you breathe is thick with the echoes of history, where monarchs still rule with an iron hand, and the shadow of the Black Death has cast a pall over everything, whispering tales of death and survival in every corner of Europe. Imagine a continent stitched together by a patchwork of bustling towns, quiet villages, and sprawling fields where peasants work from dawn until dusk, their hands roughened by toil, their bodies accustomed to the rhythm of seasons and harvests. The cities are lively, chaotic places, markets busier than Black Friday, yet with more pigs than people, and streets so narrow and muddy that walking feels like wading through a perpetual swamp. Shops spill out onto the cobblestones, filled with everything from fragrant spices and silken fabrics to tools so simple they seem almost primitive, yet each one vital to the life of the community. Society then is sharply divided, a tapestry woven with stark contrasts. Nobles in their stone castles and gilded halls sit atop the social pyramid, wielding power granted by land and blood, their lives a blend of luxury and paranoia. Beneath them, the clergy, mysterious figures cloaked in robes, holding sway over people's hopes and fears, tell stories of divine justice and eternal reward. The merchants, quick to adapt, thrive on trade, while the common folk, peasants, artisans, labourers, struggle to make ends meet, often at the mercy of crop failures, plagues, and the whims of those above. Ruling over this world is a fragile dance of power. Kings and queens command armies and declare wars, but their authority is often shaky, dependent on the loyalty of nobles or the favour of divine right. Cities are governed by councils or local lords who balance the needs of their people with the demands of the crown, and in the background superstitions and old beliefs shape daily life, whether it's believing that a certain star foretells disaster or that wearing a specific charm can ward off evil. Physically, the landscape stretches out in a patchwork of lush farmland, dense forests and winding dirt roads that seem more like veins than thoroughfares. The countryside is dotted with small chapels and roadside shrines, places where people stop to pray or seek blessings, sometimes to thank the heavens, sometimes to plead for mercy from the unseen forces they believe govern their fate. Villages cluster along rivers or crossroads, their thatched roofs and timber walls giving them a humble charm, yet beneath that simplicity lies a resilience born of necessity. The pace of life is relentless yet predictable. People wake with the first crow of the rooster or the toll of the village bell, ready to work in fields, craft wares, or tend to livestock. The rhythm is dictated by the seasons, planting in spring, tending in summer, harvesting in autumn, and preparing for the cold in winter. Religious festivals punctuate this schedule, offering brief moments of joy amid hardship, with processions, feasts, and prayers that stretch late into the night. Taking a bath? Well, that's a suspicious act, almost like announcing to your neighbours that you're planning something shady, so most wash infrequently, and cleanliness is often a matter of reputation rather than hygiene. Your modern mind might chuckle at the thought of your Wi-Fi frustrations, trying to get a signal in the middle of a busy city, yet here your greatest challenge is lighting a fire on a damp day or convincing a stubborn pig to stay in its pen. Carrying a bucket of water every morning, hauling firewood, and chopping herbs for remedies, these are your daily CrossFit routines, without the benefit of gyms or trainers. And forget about instant gratification. Here, patience and persistence are your best allies. Politically and culturally, this is an age of kingdoms and principalities that often war with each other over land, riches, or petty insults. Large empires are rare. Most places are a patchwork of local rulers, each with their own laws and customs. Sometimes invasions and sieges turn peaceful towns into battlegrounds overnight, with armies marching in, banners fluttering like a storm of colour and noise. The church holds immense power, its influence woven into the very fabric of daily life, guiding morality, punishing heresy, and blessing or cursing entire regions with a wave of a bishop's hand. Superstitions flourish, sometimes rooted in genuine belief, other times in pure absurdity. Some folks swear that carrying a handful of onions in your pocket can ward off the plague, organic medicine, they say. Others believe that sniffing flowers soaked in vinegar makes you immune to sickness, or that wearing a talisman made from the bones of a rat grants divine protection. Masks, but make it medieval, beak-shaped contraptions filled with herbs, worn not to hide identity but to keep disease at bay, though many suspect they're more for show than for real protection. Now that you understand the world you've woken up in, the grand, often chaotic stage set for daily life, let's gently shift our focus inward. It's time to zoom in from the sweeping panorama of kings and plagues to the intimate, personal routines of those who live here. How do they wash their hands? What do they consider clean? And how does a society so steeped in superstition and survival perceive the simple act of hygiene? That's where our story truly begins. The air is cool and slightly damp, carrying the faint scent of smoke from the hearth and the lingering aroma of herbs drying on racks near the fireplace. Your body feels stiff from the night's stillness, muscles protesting after hours of immobility, and you stretch slowly, feeling the ache in your joints like a gentle reminder of yesterday's toil. As you sit up, your hand reaches instinctively for the basin of cold water, rough, wooden, and unpolished, that rests nearby. You dip your hands into the water, feeling the chills seep into your skin, a sharp contrast to the warm bed you just left. With a few quick splashes, you rinse your face, the water's icy sting awakening your senses and stirring the sluggish fog of sleep. No soap here, just water, and maybe a handful of herbs or a splash of vinegar to mask the odors of the night. You wipe your face with a coarse, woven cloth, rough against your skin like 1,000 tiny pebbles, and then you dry your hands on a scratchy towel, frayed at the edges. In this world, cleanliness isn't about fresh-smelling soap or silky lotions. It's a matter of necessity, an act of survival wrapped in superstition and tradition. Most folks believe that baths are suspicious, almost like announcing to the neighbors that you're up to something shady. Instead, they rely on perfumes and herbs, dried lavender, rosemary, and sage, pinned in cloth pouches or sprinkled into water meant to purify the air or mask the stench of sweat and dirt. You might see a jar of vinegar on the shelf, thought to be an antiseptic of sorts, or bundles of dried herbs hanging from the ceiling, their faint aroma mingling with the smoky air. Forget your 10-step skincare routine. Here, survival is splashing some water and hoping the smell doesn't scare the neighbors away. Inside your humble dwelling, the scene is simple but full of textures and sounds. The walls are dark and rough, made of timber and wattle, with patches of moss or clay filling the gaps. A small hearth crackles softly, its wood emitting a sweet, smoky scent as it burns, filling the space with a cozy, if slightly pungent, warmth. Utensils made of clay and iron sit on shelves, pots, cups, a ladle or two, each with their own dents and scratches, telling stories of countless meals prepared with care or desperation. The floor beneath your feet is uneven, with splinters and crevices that catch the light, and sometimes your toes, reminding you that comfort is a rare thing in this world. The furniture is sturdy but basic, perhaps a rough-hewn table, a bench, and a cot with worn, scratchy blankets. The smell of burning wood, mixed with the faint aroma of damp clothes and leather, pervades the space, creating a sensory tapestry that's both grounding and strangely comforting. Clothing here is a far cry from the soft, breathable fabrics of your modern wardrobe. You wear a heavy, coarse tunic, perhaps wool, rough against your skin, paired with thick leggings or trousers and sturdy leather shoes that are stiff and uncomfortable at first. The fabrics scratch and chafe, making every movement a reminder of your everyday struggle against the elements and the dirt. It's like being hugged by a very prickly hedgehog. Your skin may itch from the coarse fibers, and the cold can seep through the layers, making your bones ache in winter like a constant, icy handshake. You might laugh quietly at the thought. Your idea of uncomfortable clothing might be a scratchy sweater, but here it's wool that feels like hugging a hedgehog. Breakfast is a simple affair. Nothing fancy, no coffee or pastries. Usually it's a piece of hard bread, perhaps stale but filling, accompanied by a slice of aged cheese or a thin broth. More water than flavor, but enough to stave off the hunger. You take a bite, feeling the dry, crumbly texture of the bread and the salty tang of the cheese, which might be a little moldy, but still sustains you. Drinking is often just water or weak beer, sometimes flavored with herbs or a splash of vinegar to add a bit of zest. It's not the bright, aromatic coffee that wakes you up in the morning. It's more like swallowing a shot of cold, flat liquid that leaves you both satisfied and slightly unsettled, like a reminder that life's comforts are few and far between. Then there are the rituals, those strange, often superstitious acts that are believed to keep disease at bay. You might wear a small talisman, an amulet carved from bone, or a bit of iron, believed to ward off illness. Perhaps you say a prayer or mutter a blessing before stepping outside, crossing yourself to avoid misfortune. Some burn a pinch of incense or dried herbs like sage or juniper, hoping it will purify the air and your spirit. And if you're a doctor or someone concerned with health, you'll be donning your plague mask, the beak-shaped contraption filled with herbs and aromatic resins, an odd, bird-like helmet that makes you look more like a strange, feathered guardian than a healer. You fill the mask with aromatic herbs, probably rosemary, thyme, or dried flowers, hoping to filter out the miasma you believe causes disease. You pull on your heavy robe, a thick, waxed fabric that feels like wearing a suit of armor, and tighten the straps of your mask, ready to face whatever sickness lurks outside. All these routines, simple yet so vital, are woven into the fabric of your day. They're a dance of necessity, superstition, and habit, each act a small act of defiance against the chaos of illness and death that stalks these streets. It's strange, isn't it, how different it is from your modern life, where a splash of soap and a swipe of sanitizer seem like basic rites. Here, it's a ritual, a hope, a prayer, wrapped in dirt and herbs. Your mind might chuckle softly at the absurdity of it all, yet you accept it, knowing that in this world, survival depends on these tiny acts of faith and persistence. So, as you finish your morning routine, perhaps a quick sip of sour wine or a bit of dried fruit, you prepare to step outside. The world awaits, rough, raw, and unpredictable, but for now you linger in this space of simple routines, the smells, textures, and sounds anchoring you in a fragile medieval rhythm. And with that you are ready to face whatever comes next, whether it's the bustling marketplace or an encounter with the unseen terrors that lurk just beyond your sight. A cool, misty fog clings to the town like a shroud, wrapping everything in a damp embrace. The air is thick with the scent of damp earth, burnt wood from the hearths, and the faint, medicinal aroma of herbs carried on the breeze. The sky above is a dull grey, the sun struggling to pierce through layers of clouds and fog, casting a muted pall over the bustling scene. As you move forward, the ground beneath your feet shifts between patches of muddy clay, scattered pebbles, and dusty patches of dried dirt. Your cloak, heavy and rough, sways with each step, and the weight of the mask with its long beak presses against your face, a constant reminder of your purpose. You carry a small bag of dried herbs and a wooden staff, tools of your trade, symbols of your role in this strange medieval world. The streets are alive with motion, merchants shouting over each other, their voices muffled by the fog, children running and laughing, their footsteps echoing off the cobblestones, soldiers marching in formation, their armor clinking softly, and townsfolk hurrying to their daily tasks. The smell of baked bread and roasted meats drifts from the market stalls, mingling with the more pungent odors of livestock, sweat, and the occasional whiff of something rotten. You feel eyes upon you, some curious, others wary, all aware of your presence, some with admiration, many with suspicion. Children stare at you, their wide eyes filled with a mixture of fascination and fear, as if they sense that you are both protector and harbinger. Adults nod politely or avert their gaze, whispering behind cupped hands about your strange attire and your grim duty. Nobles and merchants, seated in their fine carriages or huddled in market squares, regard you with a mix of respect and disdain, knowing that your role is vital but also steeped in superstition and fear. You navigate through this lively chaos, moving from house to house, the scent of damp wood and herbs following you like a shadow. Your task is clear: visit the sick, examine the afflicted, offer herbal remedies, and burn your protective garments after each visit to prevent spreading the disease. The act of examining a patient involves more than just inspection. It's a tactile experience, feeling fevers radiate from their bodies, listening to their coughs, and carefully noting the pallor or jaundice that marks their condition. Your mask, with its beak filled with aromatic herbs, acts as both protection and a symbol, an odd, bird-like guardian warding off the unseen threat. Some doctors believed that carrying a cane wasn't just support, it was for poking patients from a safe distance, a tool as much for reassurance as for caution. Others thought that smoking tobacco inside the beak mask would keep the disease at bay, like medieval aromatherapy, though we're pretty sure most just liked the strange smell. Your duties extend beyond individual patients. You are part of a larger rhythm, a community caught in the grip of fear and superstition. Markets bustle with merchants hawking their wares, some wearing charms or amulets to ward off illness, others muttering prayers as they haggle. Religious processions weave through the streets, banners fluttering, voices raised in hymns, sometimes with a hint of desperation, sometimes with hope. The town's rhythm is dictated by the church bells that toll at dawn, midday, and dusk, calling everyone to prayer, work, or reflection. You pass by the local blacksmith, the rhythmic pounding of his hammer echoing through the air, sparks flying like tiny stars, an almost musical backdrop to your day. Farmers and laborers, their hands calloused and dirt-stained, go about their chores, their faces smeared with sweat and dust, unaware of the invisible enemy lurking in every breath. You notice the curious glances from children playing in the alleyways, their laughter muffled by the fog, and the stern faces of soldiers patrolling the town's perimeter, always watchful for signs of chaos or invasion. Your role is crucial yet strange, an odd mixture of healer, investigator, and ritual specialist. You inspect clothing and skin, feeling the feverish warmth radiate beneath layers of coarse wool or linen. You listen to coughs and watch for signs of distress, all while trying to keep your own nerves steady. You may burn herbs and incense, believing that the smoke will purify the air and ward off the miasma you think causes sickness. Some doctors carried a cane, not just for support, but to poke at the sick from a safe distance, avoiding direct contact, an early form of social distancing, if you will. Others thought that smoking dried herbs inside the mask's beak would keep the disease away, a medieval aromatherapy of sorts, though frankly, it's more about tradition and superstition than proven science. As you weave through the town's winding streets, you realize that this is more than just a routine. It's a dance of faith, fear, and necessity. Every glance, every gesture, every act is infused with meaning, respect from some, suspicion from others. The nobleman in his fine cloak eyes you with a mixture of disdain and hope, perhaps thinking you an essential part of his survival or a reminder of the thin line between health and death. A merchant nervously adjusts a charm around his neck, whispering a prayer as you pass by. In the background, villagers continue their routines, harvesting, trading, praying, each step a small act of resilience against the invisible threat. Behind every busy market stall and every wary glance, there's a deeper fear that shapes this world, a fear that what they cannot see might destroy everything they hold dear. To understand why they look at you that way, we need to step into their beliefs and superstitions. But for now, you carry on with your duties, knowing that each visit, each examination, each prayer is a small act of defiance in a world trembling on the edge of chaos. You can feel it everywhere, as thick as the fog that clings to the narrow streets at dawn. It's in the way the villagers cast nervous glances over their shoulders, clutching their rosaries like lifelines, whispering prayers under their breath as you pass. It's in the heavy silence that blankets the city during the hours of prayer, broken only by the distant toll of church bells announcing funerals, their deep, solemn clangs echoing through the deserted squares. The sense of dread is woven into the very fabric of daily life, a constant undercurrent that pulses beneath every handshake, every whispered conversation, every hurried step past shadowed alleyways. You notice how even the bravest of townsfolk carry that invisible weight, fear of disease, hunger, war, and divine punishment, like a second skin that no amount of faith can fully shed. In the churches, the atmosphere is dense with religiosity. Candles flicker in the darkness, casting a trembling glow on stained glass that depicts saints with eyes full of compassion, or perhaps warning. People cross themselves repeatedly, their fingers trembling slightly, as if the act itself might ward off the unseen evil lurking outside. Priests, robed in their ornate vestments, intone prayers in Latin, their voices rising in a chorus that seems to reach straight into the heavens, pleading for mercy. Monks march through the streets, their voices rising in hymns, their chants echoing off the stone walls, filling the air with incense smoke that curls upward like ghostly serpents. The scent of frankincense and myrrh mingles with the smell of sweat, unwashed bodies, and the stale air of crowded chapels. Today, you might scroll through social media for comfort, an endless stream of cat videos or motivational quotes, but here people clutch rosaries as if those beads were life jackets in a storm they cannot see, but certainly feel. Superstitions flourish like wildflowers in this garden of fear. Every object, every ritual, is believed to hold some power against the miasma, the foul, decaying air thought to carry the plague. Amulets carved from bone or iron hang from necks, charms made of herbs and feathers are tucked into belts, and strange symbols are painted onto door frames to keep evil spirits out. Some believe that carrying a dead toad in your pocket can ward off the pestilence, an idea that makes you wonder about the medieval version of essential oils, except with a slightly higher chance of accidental poisoning. Others think that whipping themselves in the streets, like a ritualistic dance of penance, will earn God's mercy, as if pain itself could cleanse the soul and the body from disease. You chuckle softly at these absurdities, knowing that in their minds, these acts are as vital as the air they breathe. For the community, fear is a unifying force, yet also a dividing one. It binds people in shared anxiety, making everyone hyper-aware of the slightest cough or fever. It drives some to frantic acts of devotion, others to suspicion and accusations. When a family falls ill, the neighbors gather whispering about curses or witches, their eyes darting from one face to another, each whisper a thread in the fabric of collective paranoia. Accusations fly like arrows. It's that woman with the strange herbs, or that man's family was seen talking to a traveler. Rumors spread faster than the disease itself. Some villagers, desperate to protect themselves, gather in mobs, ready to lynch anyone they believe to be a threat, be it a suspected heretic, a witch, or simply someone unlucky enough to fall ill. The community is always on high alert, a fragile balance between faith and fear, trust and suspicion. And in the middle of this chaos you move like a shadow, an outsider carrying your strange mask, your herbs, your tools. The townspeople regard you with a mixture of hope and distrust. To some, you are a necessary evil, a guardian warding off death, a symbol of divine punishment or salvation, depending on their beliefs. To others, you are a potential conduit for the disease, a carrier of miasma, or even a witch in disguise. Children stare at you with wide, nervous eyes, clutching their mother's skirts, whispering prayers that seem to tremble on their lips. Adults nod politely, muttering prayers or crossing themselves as you pass. Nobles and merchants, wrapped in fine cloaks and embroidered scarves, eye you with suspicion, their faces masks of civility, masking underlying fears. Some whisper behind your back, wondering if your strange attire is a charm or a curse, an armor against death or a sign of doom. You see the strange rituals and objects that people cling to, perhaps the dried herbs sewn into pouches, believed to trap spirits or repel the disease. Maybe the blood of sacrificed animals thought to purify the air, an eerie, almost comical ritual that makes you wonder if this is the medieval equivalent of aromatherapy, just with a slightly higher chance of accidental poisoning, or the strange music of chants and spells performed to banish evil spirits or miasma, as if sound alone could cleanse the air. It's a world where faith and superstition blend seamlessly, where every cough is a sign from God, every strange smell a curse, and every act of devotion a shield against the invisible enemy. Fear here is like the smoke from 100 chimneys, smouldering, pervasive, impossible to escape. It seeps into every corner of life, coloring every decision, every prayer, every whispered hope. It unites the community, yet also divides it. Some find comfort in rituals, others in the blame they cast on their neighbors. The fear is a shared burden, a heavy cloak that no one can fully shed, no matter how fervently they pray or how many charms they hang around their necks. And beyond the prayers and charms, there are bonds, fragile, human, and surprisingly resilient. You notice how, even amidst the chaos, families cling to each other, whispering comforting words, sharing bread and wine, trying to find some semblance of normalcy. The community's collective fear is matched by its collective hope. Hope that faith, superstition, and a little bit of luck will see them through another day. As you move from place to place, you realize that beneath all the rituals, beneath all the fears, it's still people, just people, trying to cling to life in a world that feels increasingly out of control. And so, as you continue your work, as you face the endless stream of prayers, superstitions, and fears, you sense it all. This heavy, invisible fog of dread that hangs over them like a thick blanket. It's the silent, unspoken truth of this world that even in its darkest moments, hope, like faith, persists, woven into every prayer, every ritual, every trembling hand clutching a charm. And beyond that, there's a quiet promise that even in this storm of fears and superstitions, there remains a flicker of humanity, fragile but fiercely burning, waiting for the dawn. You begin your day walking through the narrow, winding streets, feeling the weight of the collective anxiety that hangs in the air like a heavy cloak. Despite the constant threat of sickness, starvation, and divine wrath, you can't help but notice how people lean on each other, sometimes literally, because in this world, a shoulder to cry on, a shared bread, or even a quiet, comforting silence can be the difference between despair and resilience. It's in the way a mother gently rocks her child, whispering prayers that mingle with the scent of stew and the distant sound of a lute. Or in the way a neighbor helps carry a heavy load, their backs stooped, but their spirits united in mutual necessity. You see how, even in times of hardship, the bonds of kinship and community are what tether everyone together, fragile, sometimes strained, but unbreakably vital. In the cramped, cluttered homes, often shared by extended families, you observe a living mosaic of relationships. Forget Netflix family dramas. Here, your cousin might sleep on the cold wooden floor just 2 feet from you every night, sharing warmth and stories that no screen could replicate. Grandparents sit by the fire, their faces weathered by years of hardship, telling tales that blend superstition, history, and perhaps a dash of humor, like how one old woman claims that sneezing during a wedding is a sign of good luck, unless you ask her granddaughter, who's convinced it's a curse. Children run wild, their dirty faces smeared with soot, their laughter mingling with the crackling of the hearth. Every day, they grow up surrounded by the constant reminder that family isn't just a bond of love, but also a chain of obligations that can feel like shackles or shields depending on the moment. And then there are the friendships, small acts of kindness that stitch the community fabric tighter. You witness neighbors sharing a crust of bread, passing a cup of weak ale, whispering advice or gossip while their hands brush or their eyes meet in a silent understanding. These moments are fleeting, fragile, like a candle flickering in the draught, but they remind everyone that even in the worst times, companionship is a lifeline. In a world where suspicion often lurks behind every smile, trust is a precious commodity. A farmer might lend you a sack of grain, only to wonder later if you'll return it, or accuse you of witchcraft if misfortune strikes. It's a delicate dance, offering help while watching your back, knowing that today's friend might be tomorrow's accuser. Romance, of course, is no less complicated. Love stories bloom in secret corners, glances exchanged behind beaded curtains, whispered promises made beneath the flickering light of a lantern. Maybe a young couple plans to marry, their hearts pounding with hope and fear, knowing that their union might be seen as a rebellion against the chaos outside. Or perhaps they exchange furtive touches, daring to believe that amid the chaos some sparks still burn bright enough to ignite something more than just superstition. Imagine trying to find love in a tavern filled with the smell of stale ale, roasting meat, and the occasional raucous fiddle tune. Your flirtation, a dangerous game, like a medieval version of swiping right, where the promise of a dance depends less on a screen and more on a glance across a smoky room. Social hierarchy shapes these bonds, of course. Nobles and peasants navigate their worlds with a mixture of reverence and suspicion. A noble's courtesy might mask disdain or perhaps a grudging respect, while a peasant's loyalty is often measured in service or coin. You, as a plague doctor or healer, occupy a peculiar space, respected by some for your knowledge, feared by others for your association with death, respectable yet never fully trusted. You might be greeted with a bow or a hurried prayer, or whispered about behind your back as a possible witch or heretic. The clergy, for their part, hold sway over many lives, performing rituals that seem almost theatrical amid the austerity of daily survival. Priests march at the head of processions, their voices rising in chants, their incense clouds enveloping the crowd like a protective shroud, while townsfolk follow, clutching relics, crosses, or a handful of herbs, their senses overwhelmed by the sharp aroma of fire and spices. Community gatherings, festivals, fairs, funerals are the heartbeat of social life. You see the market bustling with life, vendors shouting over each other, the smell of fresh bread competing with the pungent aroma of cheeses and smoked fish. People dress in colourful cloth, their voices rising in song or argument as they haggle over wares. The clatter of wooden carts and the melodies of wandering minstrels fill the air, as if the town's very spirit is woven into the sounds and smells. During festivals, everyone's masks slip just a little, laughter spilling over the tension, dances that sway the fear aside for a moment. You can feel the warmth of shared bread, the grip of a handshake that promises solidarity or warns of treachery. But beneath the surface, tensions simmer. Rivalries over land, disputes over inheritance, accusations of witchcraft, these are the threads that threaten to unravel the fabric of social harmony. You might overhear whispered rumors about a neighbor's suspicious activity or see a sudden fight erupt over a minor insult, the violence as unpredictable as the plague itself. And even in these moments of connection, a dark humor persists. Your modern mind might chuckle at the thought, your awkward office party? Try a medieval wedding feast where half the guests are drunk by noon and the other half are arguing over goats or who gets to sit next to the Lord's daughter. At least your co-workers don't accuse you of witchcraft when your Wi-Fi cuts out, though, in this world, a bad harvest or a sudden illness might be enough to label someone a sorcerer. Some villages believed that if you sneezed during a wedding, it was a sign of good luck, unless it wasn't, depending on which grandmother you asked. Public punishments, such as stocks or flogging, weren't just about discipline, they were community events like twisted medieval reality TV, where everyone watched, jeered, and whispered about the shame. It was a way of reinforcing social bonds through shared spectacle, even if it made your stomach turn. All of this, these relationships, rivalries, alliances, and rituals, are what keep life ticking in a world teetering on the edge. You realize that beneath the layers of fear and superstition, there's an undeniable hunger for connection, for warmth, for a moment's respite from the relentless shadows. These bonds, fragile as they are, serve as the glue that holds society together, even when the threat of death looms large. You might be seen as both a healer and a symbol of mortality, an outsider who holds the key to survival or the reminder of inevitable decay. But in the end, it's these human ties, small acts of kindness, stolen moments of love, shared routines of hope that sustain the community. Because after all, no matter how brutal the world becomes, a hand held in another's grip can still feel like a small act of defiance against despair. And as you move deeper into this intricate web of human connection, you understand that even in a time of plague and paranoia, life persists, sometimes quietly, sometimes fiercely. These bonds are the quiet heartbeat of the town, whispering that despite everything, the human spirit refuses to be broken. It's in the way they smile at each other across a crowded room, in the fleeting touch of a hand, in the shared silence after a prayer. And you, perhaps more than anyone, realize that these are the true treasures, more precious than any relic or charm, because they remind us that even amidst the darkness there is a flicker of light, a spark of humanity that no plague can extinguish. The flickering light of tallow candles casts dancing shadows on the walls, illuminating a scene that feels both humble and somehow sacred. Before you, a modest feast spreads across a trestle, breads with crusts thick and crackling, their surfaces golden and dusted with a faint layer of flour. The aroma rises slowly, earthy, hearty, with hints of boiled grains, salted fish, and a swirl of herbs, an invitation to the senses that awakens your appetite, even if hunger is a distant, constant companion. You hear the gentle clink of pewter cups, the scrape of rough-spun cloth on wood, and the low murmur of voices. The air carries a mixture of scents, malty beer, the sharp tang of vinegar, the faint sweetness of dried fruits, and the lingering aroma of roasted meat seasoned with a pinch of salt and a dash of herbs. This is a world where food is a quiet act of resistance against the chaos outside, a ritual that sustains body and soul alike. Your view of the table reveals a landscape of textures and simple elegance. Wooden trenchers hold thick slices of coarse bread, some cracked along the edges, their crumb dense and chewy. A small bowl of pottage, a thick stew of grains, beans, and bits of salted pork steams gently, releasing a cloud of vapors that mingle with the smoky air. A wedge of yellow cheese, hardened by time and salt, sits next to a handful of hard-boiled eggs, their shells mottled and cracked. The utensils are few: a rough iron knife, a wooden spoon, and perhaps a leather strap for wiping greasy fingers. Napkins are scarce, just a rag or a piece of rough cloth, often soaked with the day's meal or the dirt of the street. Water poured from a communal jug tastes of the earth. Cool, slightly bitter, with a hint of mineral that tugs at your tongue. On high days, the elite might indulge in slightly finer fare: roast chicken or goose, spiced with exotic pepper or saffron, fruits preserved in honey, and sweetened wine that glows ruby in the flickering light. But today, in your modest setting, simplicity rules. The everyday meal is a humble fortress: pottage, bread, and a piece of dried fish, fuel for the day's labor or the vigil against sickness. Yet, even in its austerity, the food carries a kind of poetry. Each bite a reminder of survival, each sip a small act of defiance. Before you begin, a brief ritual unfolds: a quiet prayer, a crossing of oneself, or perhaps a gesture of thanks. Words spoken softly, as if trying not to disturb the sacred silence that blankets this moment. Washing your hands in a basin of cold water, you feel the roughness of the cloth, the coolness on your fingertips. A simple act that echoes the importance of cleanliness, even if it's far from the antiseptic routines of modern life. The meal is served in measured portions as custom dictates: no excess, no waste. The host, perhaps a local lord or a village elder, offers a blessing, their voice rising above the murmurs, calling for gratitude and protection. Your palate is a symphony of modest flavors: bitterness from the stale beer, the saltiness of the meat, the faint bitterness of overcooked vegetables. You notice how the bread, dense and rough, sharpens your hunger rather than dulls it, as modern soft loaves might do. The texture of the crust, rough against your gums, reminds you that nourishment is often a tactile experience, one that sharpens the senses and keeps the mind alert. The wine, if you indulge, is a thin, sour liquid, but it warms the chest and eases the throat, a small comfort amid the austerity. The scene around you is alive with the rhythm of daily life: a marketplace bustling with shouts of vendors, the crackle of fire from bakers' ovens, the clatter of barrels being rolled into place. You might catch the hurried exchange of ingredients: a vendor offering fresh herbs, a baker shouting the price of bread, a merchant bartering over a jar of honey. The smell of warm bread mingles with the scent of wet earth and the faint sweetness of dried figs. These small details weaving the fabric of a community sustained by shared routines and simple joys. As you eat, you reflect on the contrast, how the grandeur of banquet tables in the noble halls is replaced by these humble gatherings, where food is less a symbol of wealth and more a vital act of resilience. The lavishness of spices and sugar, once reserved for the elite, is replaced here by the necessity of making do, adding a pinch of salt, a bit of vinegar, or a handful of herbs to brighten the flavors. Waste is minimal: the leftover bones and crumbs saved for future broths or fed to the animals, an economy of sustenance that feels both practical and poetic. In this moment, the table becomes more than just a place to eat. It's a stage where social bonds are reinforced. Clinking cups and shared bites forge connections: families, neighbors, friends, each gesture a subtle act of defiance against the chaos outside. Even in times of scarcity or suspicion, these small rituals, passing a loaf, offering a slice of cheese, remind everyone that life persists through community, through shared routines. And after the last crumb is eaten, the last sip taken, the city breathes a little easier, ready to face the night. But you know that beyond the flickering candlelight, the streets will call again with their music, their laughter, and the quiet, brave acts that keep hope alive. Because in this world, even in the shadow of fear and hardship, the simple act of sharing a meal is a small, sacred rebellion, a reminder that beneath the hardship, life's most enduring pleasures are found around the table, waiting patiently for you to return. You step out from the shadowed comfort of the tavern into the cool, dusky streets, where lanterns cast a dim glow on cobblestones slick with the evening's dampness. The air is thick with the scent of warm beer that has gone flat, mingling with the faint aroma of sawdust and wet earth. Somewhere nearby, laughter bubbles up, muffled and easy, like a secret shared between old friends. Shadows stretch long and crooked, their shapes flickering in the lantern light, as if the night itself is stretching to contain the community's quiet pulse. As you walk, you notice the soft hum of voices rising and falling, chants, curses and songs, all woven into the tapestry of this fleeting, fragile life. Soon you arrive at the bustling heart of social life, the tavern. The door creaks open, releasing a gust of warm, yeasty air, and inside, the dimness surrounds you like a well-worn blanket. The rough wooden benches are uneven, their surfaces scarred by years of use. The long bar, dark and polished with age, hosts a motley crew of patrons, some leaning in with smiles, others lost in their own shadows. Small pools of lamplight wobble as the candles flicker, casting dancing reflections on the pewter mugs and clay pipes. The air is alive with the clatter of dice, the scraping of game pieces, 9 men's Morris boards, their pieces clacking softly, and the low hum of conversation that rises and falls like the tide. There's a certain humour in the way the dice roll, promising luck, then falling flat, like a bill that arrives just after payday, reminding you that fate is as unpredictable as the final turn of a coin. You might find yourself joining in the game, your hand brushing the cold, rough surface of a bone dice, feeling the weight of possibility. The laughter is hearty, unrestrained, even when the fortunes turn against you. Someone challenges you to a round of simple music, flautas, a tambourine, perhaps a Rebecca. And soon the room is filled with melodies that twist and swirl, not always perfect, but warmly sincere. The steps are slow, collective, an easy dance in a circle, feet marking time against the worn wooden floor. Sweat beads on foreheads, but there's a sweetness in the effort, a shared rhythm that keeps the night alive. And then the scene shifts. Here, at a makeshift stage or a cleared corner, an act begins. A storyteller, perhaps, or a preacher, steps forward, clad in a patchy cloak, with a voice that rises and falls, telling tales of saints and miracles. The crowd listens, rapt, their eyes flickering with reverence and mischief. The morality play unfolds, simple costumes, exaggerated gestures, and laughter erupts at the clumsy antics, even as a hush falls during the more serious moments. The townsfolk know well the stories of saints and sinners, of divine interventions and moral lessons, woven into the fabric of their lives. Seasonal festivals bring their own color to the night. In the summer, bonfires roar, bright against the dark, flares of orange and red that seem to swallow the stars. At Saint Juan, the scent of burning cera and herbs fills the cool air. As processions wind through the streets, candles, flickering like tiny stars brought down to earth, the smell of wax and fresh-cut hay mingles with the sweet aroma of roasted chestnuts and sour apples. People dance around the fire in simple, rhythmic steps, their voices rising in songs that echo the cycles of planting and harvest, rituals that bind them to the land and to each other. But beneath this lively veneer, shadows lurk. The flagellants, those penitents who march through the night, whip themselves in frenzied devotion, their cries piercing the dark, an unsettling reminder that faith and fear walk hand in hand. Sometimes their sermons cut through the festivities, harsh, thunderous voices demanding repentance, their words like thunderclaps in the quiet. Curious onlookers gather, some whispering prayers, others watching the spectacle with a mix of awe and unease. You, as a healer, recognize the tension, how even in celebration there's a whisper of dread, a silent acknowledgement of the fragility of life and the thin line that separates joy from despair. In the midst of it all, you might catch a glance from a neighbor or a fellow healer, eyes that hold respect and a flicker of fear. Someone approaches, seeking a quick blessing or a word of reassurance, and you gently touch the edge of a nearby wall or a window ledge, as if to ward off ill fortune. The community's collective heartbeat is steady, yet fragile. Each song, each dance, a defiant act against the shadows lurking beyond the glow of lanterns. And so the night continues, a delicate balance of raucous laughter and silent prayers. The music swells and wanes, the candles flicker, and the city breathes in its fleeting moments of joy amid the ever-present awareness that everything, life, death, laughter, tears, follows the same inexorable cycle. Between one tune and the next, you remember. All of this, the dancing, the singing, the praying, is part of the great, unending rhythm of existence. When the last notes fade and the distant bell tolls, perhaps from a monastery or a church, there's an unspoken reminder. Everything begins and ends here, wrapped in the same breath, the same fleeting light. You smile softly, knowing that the city's song continues beyond the night, as it always has, as it always will, an eternal dance between celebration and remembrance. As you lie quietly in your chamber, the faint flicker of a single candle dances softly on the wall, casting gentle shadows that seem to sway in time with your breath. Outside, the whispers of the city breathe along with you, murmurs of daily life, distant calls to prayer, the faint echo of footsteps on cobblestones. You recall the quiet miracle of birth, the tiny cry of a newborn, like a miniature bell announcing new life amid the shadows. The midwife's hands, rough yet tender, wrapping the fragile body in rough cloth, whispering prayers that blend with the soft rustle of linen and the warm splash of water. In those moments, beneath the humble roof of a thatched cottage or the stone arch of a church, life begins anew, fragile as a single grain of wheat. Later, you remember the promises made, an unspoken vow sealed with a clasped hand, a simple ring slipped onto a finger, a blessing whispered between neighbors outside the church door. The community gathers, their voices low but steady, as bread is broken and salt passed, tokens of union, of shared hope. These acts, small yet profound, carry the weight of generations, advice handed down from elders, the sturdy heirloom chair etched with the marks of time, each scratch telling a story. And then, the inevitable, illness coming quietly, like winter's first frost. The sickbed, a humble table, the unction of oil, murmured prayers that drift through the room like a gentle tide. When the pestilence moves swiftly, rituals are hurried, no time for grand ceremonies, only the urgent whispering of last rites, the hurried crossing of oneself. In those moments, you stand between the sacred and the helpless, offering care with dignity, recognizing that some things lie beyond even your grasp. The final departure, an unadorned grave, a simple shovel of earth, the distant toll of a heavy bell. A procession moves softly, a line of shadows and candlelight, as caskets are lowered into the cold ground. The air is filled with the scent of cypress and damp soil, the muted drip of wax from a votive, a whispered prayer on every breath. Names are remembered at the table in quiet prayers, each life woven into the fabric of the community, each memory a gentle reminder of the fleeting nature of all things. You see the skulls and bones in the painted frescoes, stark symbols reminding us that humility and mortality walk hand in hand, a time to be born and a time to die, whisper the old scriptures echoing through the silent stones. Life, in its quiet rhythm, repeats itself, birth and death, joy and sorrow, like the turning of the seasons in a calendar without notifications but full of unspoken seasons. As you close your eyes, the weight of the day settles softly. Gratitude for another breath, another heartbeat. The city continues outside your window, breathing in the night's cool air, safe for now. You listen to the steady rhythm of your own breath, slow and measured, and feel the comfort in knowing that life's greatest gift is this fragile, fleeting moment. The candle's flame dwindles, its glow softening into darkness. The warmth lingers like a quiet promise that, even in the shadows, life persists, gentle, enduring. Now, rest. The world turns quietly, and so do you, resting in the gentle certainty that the cycle continues as it always has, as it always will. Between the distant toll of the bell and the whisper of the wind, there's a peaceful silence, an invitation to sleep. Close your eyes. The city continues, and you too, in your quiet, sacred way, are part of that endless, beautiful cycle.